Ever feel like business is this giant machine that's kind of hard to grasp?
Yeah, totally.
Well, today we are taking a deep dive into the world of business stakeholders,
Okay.
the people and the groups, basically, that uh, have skin in the game.
Right.
It's more than just customers and employees.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot more than that. It's really fascinating how interconnected it all is. Every decision a business makes, it kind of has this ripple effect. It impacts a whole network of relationships.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
I get that a stakeholder is anyone with a vested interest in a business, but break it down for me. Who are we actually talking about?
So you've got the obvious ones, right? Like the owners who put up the capital and take on the risks.
Right.
But then you've got the employees who are contributing their skills and their time. And they, of course, depend on that business for their livelihood.
Right.
And then, of course, customers, super important because they're the ones generating the revenue.
Right, that makes sense. But there's got to be more than that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you got to think about things like the suppliers who are providing the resources. I mean, without them, a business can't really function.
Hmm.
And then there's the community itself, which is impacted by the business just being there, doing its thing.
Wow, so it really is like a whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
Let's start with the owners. They seem like a pretty good place to begin.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like the foundation.
Right.
But even within that category, you've got different levels of involvement.
Oh, okay.
Like take a sole trader, for instance.
Hmm.
They're pouring their heart and soul into that business. It's their baby.
Yeah.
Their personal finances, their reputation, everything's tied to its success.
So the stakes are super high when it's all on you, huh?
Oh, for sure.
That's way different from shareholders, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they own a piece of the company, but they're not really, like, involved in the day-to-day.
Exactly. Shareholders are more like investors.
Yeah.
Their influence kind of depends on how many shares they own. They can vote on big decisions at those annual shareholder meetings.
Oh, okay.
You know, the AGMs.
Yeah.
And of course, they get a share of the profits through dividends.
Speaking of dividends, I read that Commonwealth Bank of Australia, CBA, paid out like $1.75 per share last year.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard dividend,
Okay.
for a large company that's pretty stable. But what's interesting is, what does that payout actually tell us?
Ooh, good question.
It shows us that CBA is prioritizing returning value to its shareholders,
Hmm.
which suggests that they're feeling pretty confident about their continued profitability.
But that also means that there's this kind of pressure on them to maintain those profits, right?
Right.
I mean, if those dividends drop, the shareholders might start to, like, get nervous and sell off their stock.
Yeah.
And then that could hurt the company in the long run.
That's the balancing act, right?
Yeah.
You got to keep the owners happy, but you also have to consider the long-term health of the business. And, of course, the well-being of all those other stakeholders.
Speaking of balancing acts, probably no one feels that pressure more than the managers, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of caught in the middle trying to juggle all those interests.
They're in a tough spot. They are accountable to the owners, for sure.
Right.
They have to answer for the bottom line.
Right.
But they also need to keep employees motivated and productive.
Yeah.
They've got to deal with any legal issues that crop up. And increasingly, they're being asked to think about social responsibility concerns.
It's almost like they're conducting this orchestra with all these different instruments.
That's a great analogy. And just like an orchestra needs a skilled conductor to harmonize all those different sounds, businesses need effective managers to navigate all the complexities of those stakeholder relationships.
Okay, so we've got the owners who are focused on profits,
Mhm.
and then we've got the managers who are trying to keep everybody happy. What about the employees, though?
Right.
They're the ones actually doing the work.
Absolutely. And without skilled and committed employees, a business just can't function.
Right.
They're the ones producing the goods, delivering the services, interacting with the customers.
And that's where things get really interesting, right? It's not just a one-way street.
Oh, for sure.
Employees are contributing their time, their talent, their energy, so they expect something back in return. What happens when that relationship breaks down?
Oh, you see it right away. Morale plummets, productivity drops. You might even see an increase in employee turnover. And for the business, that translates to higher costs, lower quality, and ultimately a hit to the bottom line.
So it's really in everybody's best interest to make sure that employees feel valued and happy.
Absolutely.
But what does that look like? What are employees actually looking for these days beyond just a decent paycheck?
Well, they're looking for things like opportunities for professional development,
Okay.
a supportive work environment, and a sense that their work has purpose.
Mm.
More and more employees want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
A great example of that is fair share. You know that social enterprise that provides meals to people in need?
Right.
Their employees aren't just clocking in and out.
Right.
They're driven by that company's mission.
Exactly.
And that sense of purpose can be incredibly motivating.
Oh, it absolutely can. And businesses are starting to recognize that.
Yeah.
They're realizing that a happy and engaged workforce is a key to their success.
Hmm.
And they're finding creative ways to foster that,
Right.
from offering flexible work arrangements to supporting employee volunteer initiatives.
Okay, so we've covered owners, we've covered managers, we've covered employees, but no business can really survive without.
Customers.
You read my mind.
Yeah.
Let's be real. We're all customers in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And our expectations are constantly evolving, aren't they?
They are. It's not just about getting a good product at a fair price anymore. Customers are becoming more discerning. They want to know where their products come from, how they're made, and what values the company behind them stands for.
So businesses need to be more than just like profit-driven machines, right?
Right.
They need to connect with customers on a deeper level. They have to show that they care about the things that their customers care about.
Exactly. And a great example of that is a company like Shewear. They sell footwear and accessories, but they've built their entire brand by supporting causes that resonate with their target audience. They've effectively woven social responsibility into their entire business model.
It's smart because it appeals to those customers who want to feel good about where they spend their money.
Yeah.
But it can't just be about marketing.
Nah.
It's got to be authentic.
Absolutely. Customers can spot a phony a mile away. Businesses have got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And that brings us to another really crucial piece of the puzzle. Suppliers.
Right. We can't forget about the folks who provide all those raw materials, the equipment, everything a business needs to actually run.
Suppliers are the unsung heroes of the business world. Without reliable suppliers, everything just grinds to a halt.
Yeah.
Imagine a manufacturing line just suddenly coming to a standstill because a key component didn't show up on time.
Oh, wow.
It really highlights how interdependent everything is.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
If one link breaks, the whole system is affected. But tell me, beyond reliability, what else matters in that supplier relationship?
Well, just as customers are demanding more from businesses, businesses are now expecting more from their suppliers.
Interesting. What kind of expectations are we talking about?
It's like this ripple effect, Businesses that are really committed to social responsibility, they're starting to extend those expectations to their suppliers.
Oh, okay.
They're looking at things like ethical sourcing, environmental sustainability, even how the employees are treated within the supplier's own operations.
So it's like this chain of positive impact, ideally.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting for consumers like you.
Okay.
As awareness of these issues grows, your choices actually have more power than ever to influence how businesses behave.
Okay, hold on. Walk me through that. How does my, grocery shopping connect to some supplier halfway across the world?
Well, think about it this way. When you choose to support businesses that align with your values, you're sending a really powerful message.
Yeah.
You're saying, I care about fair labor practices, ethical sourcing, environmental sustainability, and those businesses, in order to stay competitive, they're going to start putting pressure on their own suppliers to meet those same standards.
So my choice at the checkout counter can actually create this ripple that goes way beyond just that one purchase.
Exactly. It's a form of activism, you could say. And this brings us back to the idea of the community as a stakeholder, something that we often overlook.
Right. We mentioned them at the start, but it's easy to think of a business like it's in this bubble, separate from the community it exists in.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Businesses are embedded in their communities. They rely on local infrastructure, a healthy workforce, a stable environment to thrive. And increasingly, people are expecting them to be good corporate citizens, giving back and addressing community concerns.
It makes sense. A business can't just take. They have to give back, contribute to the well-being of the place where they operate.
It's a two-way street, like most stakeholder relationships, and it benefits everyone involved. A healthy community provides a stable workforce, loyal customers, and a positive environment for growth. When businesses invest in their communities, everyone wins.
So what does that investment look like in practice? It's more than just putting their logo on a local sports team or something, right?
Oh, yeah. It's much more than that. It could be things like supporting local charities, investing in community development projects, creating job opportunities, or minimizing their environmental impact.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. We've got this whole web of interconnected stakeholders, owners, employees, customers, suppliers, the community. It's complex.
It is, but that complexity is what makes it so fascinating. And as we've seen, each stakeholder group has its own set of interests and expectations. Businesses really need to navigate those relationships very carefully to be successful.
It sounds like a constant balancing act, trying to keep everybody happy. We talked earlier about managers being in kind of a tough spot, but what about when the interests of different stakeholders clash? Like, what if a company has to make a decision that benefits the owners, but could potentially harm the environment or the community?
Yeah. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
These situations often involve really difficult trade-offs, but ultimately it comes down to the values that guide the business. Do they prioritize short-term profits over long-term sustainability?
Mm.
Are they willing to sacrifice their reputation for a quick financial gain? These are tough choices, and they really reveal a lot about a company's true priorities.
It makes you think about where you would draw the line, doesn't it? Like, as an employee, would you stay at a company that was doing things you fundamentally disagreed with, even if the pay was good?
Right.
Or as a consumer, would you boycott a brand that you loved if you found out that they were engaging in unethical practices?
Yeah, these are the kinds of dilemmas we all face as stakeholders, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's about being aware of the potential impacts of business decisions and making choices that align with your own values.
It feels like we're moving beyond just understanding stakeholders to actually considering our own role in this whole system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're all part of this interconnected web, and our actions have consequences. Whether we're making purchasing decisions, advocating for change within our companies, or engaging in community activism, we have the power to shape the business world for the better.
That's actually really empowering. It's not just about businesses making decisions in a vacuum. We have a voice, and we can use it to influence those decisions.
Absolutely, and that voice is getting louder. Consumers are becoming more discerning, employees are demanding more from their employers, and communities are holding businesses accountable for their actions. It's a really exciting time to be part of this evolving landscape.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the different types of stakeholders, their relationships with businesses, and the challenges that they face. But I'm curious, what trends are you seeing emerge in the world of stakeholders? What's changing, and what should we be paying attention to?
Well, one of the most significant trends is the growing importance of transparency and accountability. Consumers are demanding more information about how products are made, where they come from, and what impact they have on the environment and society.
It's like we're lifting the curtain and demanding to see what's really going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. And businesses are starting to realize that they can't hide anymore.
Right.
They need to be open about their practices and be prepared to answer tough questions.
What about technology?
Mhm.
Is that playing a role in this shift towards transparency?
Oh, absolutely. Social media and the internet have given people unprecedented access to information. It's easier than ever to research companies, compare their practices, and share your opinions with others.
So businesses can't just control the narrative anymore. They have to actually live up to their promises.
That's right. Reputation is everything in today's world, and it can be built or destroyed in an instant.
And what about the role of government? Are they doing anything to regulate these stakeholder relationships or promote more responsible business practices?
Governments are starting to play a more active role, enacting legislation around ethical sourcing, environmental protection, and corporate social responsibility. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and there's often a lag between what the public expects and what the law requires.
It sounds like this constant push and pull between businesses, consumers, and regulators, all trying to find the right balance.
It is, and that balance is constantly shifting. What was considered acceptable business practice 10 years ago might be completely unacceptable today.
So it's an evolving landscape. But how do businesses keep up with these changes? It must be overwhelming to try to navigate all these competing demands.
It can be, but forward-thinking businesses are embracing this challenge. They're realizing that listening to their stakeholders isn't just a PR exercise, it's essential for their survival.
They're seeing it as an opportunity, not a burden.
Exactly. By engaging with their stakeholders, understanding their concerns, and finding creative solutions, businesses can build stronger relationships, enhance their reputation, and ultimately achieve greater success.
You know, this whole conversation has really highlighted the importance of communication. Whether it's between a business and its employees, its customers, or the community, it seems like open and honest dialogue is crucial for building trust and finding common ground.
You're absolutely right. Communication is the key that unlocks all these relationships. It allows businesses to understand their stakeholders' needs, address their concerns, and work together to create a more sustainable and equitable future.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the different types of stakeholders, their interests and expectations, the challenges they face, and the evolving landscape of business responsibility. But I'm curious, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
That's a great question. I think the most important takeaway is that we're all stakeholders in some way. Whether we're consumers, employees, investors, or simply members of a community, we have a role to play in shaping the business world. Our choices matter, our voices matter, and we have the power to create a more responsible and sustainable future.
That's a powerful message. It's not just about businesses making decisions in a vacuum. We all have a stake in the outcome, and we can use our influence to make a difference.
Absolutely. We're not just passive observers, we're active participants in this complex and interconnected system. And by understanding our role and using our voices, we can create a business world that benefits everyone.
Okay, so we've established that we all have a role to play. But I'm curious, what specific actions can our listeners take to make a difference? What does it look like to be a responsible stakeholder?
Well, as consumers, we can be more mindful of the businesses we support, choosing those that align with our values and holding others accountable for their practices.
So it's about being a conscious consumer, doing your research, and making informed choices.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Even small changes can have a big impact.
Right.
For example, you could choose to buy from local businesses whenever possible, or support companies that are committed to sustainable practices, or even just try to reduce your overall consumption.
And what about as employees? What can we do to kind of like promote responsibility within our own companies?
As employees, we have this unique opportunity to kind of advocate for change from within.
Hmm.
We can raise awareness of ethical issues, encourage our companies to adopt more sustainable practices, and support colleagues who are speaking out.
So it's about using our voices and our influence to really push for that positive change.
Exactly. And it can be as simple as starting a conversation with your colleagues or sharing an article about a company that's doing things right, or even just bringing up your concerns with your manager.
Okay. And what about the community? How can we hold businesses accountable for their impact on the places where we live?
Well, as members of a community, we can engage with those local businesses, voice our concerns, and support organizations that are working to promote corporate responsibility. We can also use our voting power to support candidates who prioritize these issues.
So it's about being active citizens and using our collective voice to really demand better from the businesses that operate in our communities.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that businesses aren't just profit-making machines, they're part of the fabric of our communities, and they have a responsibility to contribute to our well-being.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. We've gone from the basics of stakeholders to the complexities of global supply chains and ethical sourcing. And we've really explored the power we have as individuals to shape the business world for the better.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you, and I really hope our listeners have gained a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of the business world and the power they have to influence it.
I know I have. It's definitely given me a lot to think about as a consumer, an employee, and just a member of my community.
And that's what we hope for. This deep dive is just the beginning. The conversation continues, and we encourage our listeners to keep exploring these issues, asking questions, and making informed choices.
Great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay, how about this? As a consumer, an employee, or just a member of your community, what kind of impact do you want to have on the businesses you interact with?
That's a great question. It really encourages us to reflect on our own values and how our actions can actually influence business behavior.
Exactly. We all have a voice, and we can use it to create a more just and sustainable world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of business stakeholders. We hope you've enjoyed the journey.
And we look forward to diving into another fascinating topic with you next time.